Well, hello, fellow people. So, I wanted to try to clip this little part of this really fantastic interview with this woman. I've never heard of her, and it started me to think about who would I pay as a woman comedian that I would actually pay to go see. Who? And I think I've got part guy in me because I feel like most women comedian today are not funny. In my opinion, the funny ones were of yesteryear, like Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball. They were iconic comedians, not stand up necessarily, but just comedy. They had no vanity. They told a joke, they did a joke, and they had no vanity within them. They weren't talking about social issues or anything. They were just doing straight up comedy. You know, and I think to myself, who would I actually pay to see as a woman comedian? And I could only come up with one name, but she might be added to it. The only name I could come up with is Kathleen Madigan, if you know her. But this was such a great interview, and I love what she said at the very end. That's why I have it queued up, because I want to clip this, and I'm hoping a lot of people with bigger channels will actually do this as well, because she nails it. What does she nail? What is going on in this country that is just below the surface that so many people cannot see, especially the ones who are advocating for invaders to stay in this country, illegal invaders to stay in this country. It's the most bizarre statement I've ever had to put together in a sentence. How is this happening? Well, the great dumbing down of America has been in full effect. I think Charlotte Isbert I think that's how it's pronounced. Charlotte Thompson Isbert wrote her book, The Great Dumbing Down of America, in 1999. So our education system was under attack way before it is now, way before what we see now, should I say. It's just gotten a million times worse. I mean, when they're advocating for grown men to read stories, dressed like women, to read stories to 5-year-olds. So you got to know, Charlotte knew something. And by the way, she was, I think she was the director of the Board of Education at the time. Not at the time, but before then. And then she wrote her book in 1999. But what is going on in this country is literally divide and conquer. What they've done is use the oldest playbook there is. Because when you divide a nation, it will never, ever, ever freaking stand. And she's right. We don't know history. Most Americans don't know history. I'm probably one of those kids that would be considered a nerd in the day. But history was incredibly interesting to me. And I think it's one of the easiest classes to pass, because all you have to do is read and retain it. Read and retain it. And you could pass the test. I don't know why people were cheating in history class, but they were. I guess it's in the delivery. So I guess I can be thankful for my history teachers along the way, because they were able to captivate the students, to make them want to listen. And you couldn't wait to get into Mr. Craig's class, because he was so good at it. Mr. August was another one that really enlightened me and got me very interested in history. I don't know how anybody can't be, is what I'm trying to convey here. But what they've done is, what our government has done is the simple playbook all the way back from what Albert Pike says in his letters from 1871. What we're seeing right now with this country and these invaders has been talked about since 1871. So it's not by happenstance. It was a slow hill to climb to get us to where we are. And I'm sure the powers that be are kind of shocked that it happened so easily, because it was just like a switch had been flipped, and all of a sudden you had this left-right paradigm that we've never seen in this country before. People are advocating for invaders to stay in this country. And now the solution, and this is my point, now the solution is to get our armed forces to patrol our streets, because everything is so out of control. On the surface, it looks like, wow, it's so bad, something has to be done. But people are forgetting, this is martial law. It hasn't been fully enacted, but what this little test run is doing right now, when I see snipers aimed at those paid protesters by George Soros, is getting Americans used to seeing military firing upon Americans. Okay? Right now, they're committing crimes. I don't even know how they're trying to tell you that you can tell the government, no, the federal government, no, we're not going to assist you. How the hell is that even possible? I know there has to be some separation of the state and the federal. That's why some states can become sovereign, you know. But you got to look at this for what it really is. They're doing the test run to get everybody used to our U.S. military firing upon American citizens, because the next step will be that. So I had to record this twice because my thing just crashed on me. But I want you to listen to this real quick so you'll understand where all that jabber was coming from.
This is all communist playbook, by the way. You know, people don't realize this because we don't study history. But when
it's definitely what it is.
When the Bolshevik Revolution happened, what they did was they stirred up racial and ethnic strife, because there were Muslims in Russia, in Orthodox Christian Russia, and they were telling the Muslims how oppressed they are. They were telling them how much better they were, how they had a right and an entitlement, and they played that up to drive people apart. Which, if you compare that to what's happening now, they're doing that with all the ethnic minorities. First they did it with the black people. Now they brought in people from other countries, and they're telling them they have a right to this land because of what happened to them during colonialism. I'm like, I'm sorry we gave you working toilets. I'm sorry about that. Sorry we gave you running water and the wheel. Sorry about that. Should have just let you die, you know. But they're doing that intentional, because it stirs up strife, and you can attack the strong population that is your barrier to total domination and control. That's the point.
Woo! She nailed the shit out of that, didn't she? Holy crap, let's play that again. I don't think y'all understand the gravity, the level of which she meant, how deep that goes. Holy crap, I can hardly talk.
Right.
So this is all communist playbook, by the way. You know, people don't realize this because we don't study history. But when
it's definitely what it is.
When the Bolshevik Revolution happened, what they did was they stirred up racial and ethnic strife, because there were Muslims in Russia, in Orthodox Christian Russia, and they were telling the Muslims how oppressed they are. They were telling them how much better they were, how they had a right and an entitlement, and they played that up to drive people apart. Which, if you compare that to what's happening now, they're doing that with all the ethnic minorities. First they did it with the black people. Now they brought in people from other countries, and they're telling them they have a right to this land because of what happened to them during colonialism. I'm like, I'm sorry we gave you working toilets. I'm sorry about that. Sorry we gave you running water and the wheel. Sorry about that. Should have just let you die, you know. But they're doing that intentional, because it stirs up strife, and you can attack the strong population that is your barrier to total domination and control. That's the point.
Yeah, she absolutely nails that. This is a great interview. I believe this is her name. Oh, come on, highlight. There we go. And go over and watch it. You can see I thumbs it up, because it was actually just fantastic. She's very funny, but she's also very smart. And one more fun fact. You can't really judge a book by its cover. I get it. Most people do. But she's Albanian. She's not a white chick. She's not a Karen. I love it. She grew up in, I think, Brooklyn or something shit like that. Tough as nails. Oh my gosh, I love her. She's right up there with Kathleen Madigan. Big time. And she's smart. I can't say that enough. She actually gets it. Study history. I don't know how people could just overlook it. It is a fascinating... I know a lot of history has been lied. They lied about history. But that's the fascinating thing. Once you get the root, then you start to look at the truth. And I'll give you an example of exactly what the fuck I mean. Look at these buildings. Some of these buildings in this country. Look at New York, for example. Just go downtown and look at some of those old buildings that are from the 18 whatever. Look up. Just look up. We were supposedly hammer and a nail, horse and buggy. We put out our fires with buckets, but we could build that. We could build those structures. Why do we have gargoyles and these scary looking figures coming out of these buildings? And when we were in Amsterdam, I'll give you one better. Oh man, I forgot the name of the museum, but there was a door that was at least, it had to be 30 feet tall, with a peephole, just like a door, an operating door, and it was operating. They didn't really demonstrate it that day, but there's a key that unlocks it. It's a giant door. There's a ladder that they use. If you've been to Amsterdam, you know what I'm talking about. But who built that door? Who built that door, and why was it built? Why did you need a door that big? Some of these Catholic churches, the cathedrals, the paintings, the ceilings. We did that, but we had a hammer and a nail, the wheel, a horse and a buggy, and a bucket to put out fires. It makes no sense, right? I'm telling you, history is probably one of the best subjects you could ever fucking study in school. It's just a shame that some teachers are boring at it, but you can read on your own, for goodness sakes. Once you start to read that shit, it's mind-blowing, and the older you get, the more it didn't make sense, and you start to see things for what they really are. And to add to the cherry on top again, just go back and look at Albert Pike's letter from 1871. He literally is talking about exactly what we're seeing right now. Divide and conquer. Works every time.